In 2021, we don't just have access to great and lovely looking themes, we also have newer themes which support a bunch of the new Lua based plugins. By the way, I've looked at quite a few of these Lua based plugins in some of the other videos, so go and check those out if that's of interest. So for this video, I thought I'd show you some of my favourite Vim colour schemes. Now, some of them will work just as happily in normal vanilla Vim, and some of them are specific to Lua Vim and support not only a bunch of Lua based plugins, but they even give you extra colours for things like your terminal. So if you've got Kitty or Alacrity, they'll give you colours that match those up as well, so you get a lovely sort of all-in-one. However, despite that, first and foremost, I've chosen these themes because I think they're great colour schemes for the code or the prose or whatever it is that you're working with inside Vim. Now, personally, I tend to work with front-end languages, so I'm going to show you some examples of not just the Lua file and the Lua init file, init.lua, also like PHP, SAS or CSS files and JavaScript files, just to give you sort of an idea of things like C-based languages. So without further ado, let's take a look. So this theme is called Nightfox, and I love this theme. Well, it's actually a set of themes. As you can see, there's a bunch of different styles that you get with it. 3 or 4 dark ones and a couple of light ones as well. There's a Node-based one, which is probably the one I'm the biggest fan of. So this Nightfox here, which we'll look at in a second. So yeah, the config's just a little bit different. It's very similar to Tokyo Night, if you've set up Tokyo Night. It's got heaps and heaps of options as well. This is the Node version of this theme, and I'll show you some of the other files in this. So this is a CSS file, and then let's take a look. It's a PHP file. This is just a WordPress site that I'm showing you here. Lots of detail in there, and look at that lovely colouring that you've got for Telescope as well. Just really, really nice. It's also got Lua line set up as well, so you can see there setting up Nightfox as your Lua line colour schemes as easy as that as well. Sort of interesting setup because rather than doing the usual sort of colour scheme thing that you do with the command, you can set Nightfox up like this. So you've got all your different settings here, and then you just start the colour scheme off like that with .load. Obviously fires that function. There's bunches of other subtle tweaks you can do to it as well, which I really like. Let me show you, for example, if we let's have a look at this one. So if I open up alongside here, so I've got one file one side, one file the other. You can see that the file that I'm not looking at, the inactive pane, gets a different colour, which I really appreciate. That it really helps me sort of focus on the file that I'm in at the minute. You can see here, non-current window gets the alternate colour, and then there's a bunch of other settings here. I've not changed all of them. Just look at this support there that you've got for different plugins. Absolutely fantastic. Another thing that I really like about it is it's got this, let's just search for it on here, it's called Nightfox, there you go. So if you're not sure what theme you want from all the ones that it's got, you can set that to be Nightfox, and every time your core scheme gets loaded you get a different version of the core scheme or one of the different alternate core schemes. So let me just show you what that looks like. And source that. So you can see there, every single time you source that Vim file you get a different version of Nightfox. Admittedly, it's not something I think you'd want set permanently because it'd drive you batty if every time you went in you got a completely different colour scheme, but I think it's quite nice when you're first using it just to get a feel for the different colours. There's another one again. Another one again. This one's pretty funky actually. So you get the idea. Suffice it to say, I'm absolutely loving Nightfox. I think it's a great theme, lovely set of features. Can't recommend this one enough. So okay, this one I've got no idea how you pronounce it properly. I'm going to say Melange, maybe Melange. I don't know. I don't know if that's French or what. So maybe if somebody knows, they could pop a comment down below and we can all pronounce that the right way. In the meantime, this is a great core scheme for Neovim. Any of the old timers out there, any of the OG developers might remember there used to be a editor for the Mac called Espresso, and one of the default colour schemes for that I think was called like Cappuccino or something like that. And this really reminds me of that. In fact, let's just see if I can find that. Yeah, maybe not. Right, screw it. It was a nice idea. Yeah, reminds me of that. So you can see here, there's two variants. I'm just going to show you the darker one in this instance. So anyway, without further ado, let's do that. So we got over on the left here, we have got Markdown file over on the left, SAS file on the right here. Let's have a look. That's what Telescope looks like in there. So that's what a Neovim file. That's what a Lua file looks like. I really like the balance with the comments in this theme. I think it's got they're just very well considered colours. It's very readable. So as long as you can sort of get over the brownness of it, which to be honest, it looks probably a lot better in the flesh, as it were, than it does on video. It's really nice. It's like a JavaScript file. So that's a JavaScript file there. Again, it's just, you use it for a few hours and it's just very easy on the eye, and I think the colours are very well considered because, I don't know, it's just very easy to pick out different things in this file. So, I mean, PHPs can be rough anyway, but my PHP files is a bit of a horror show, so this isn't probably the best example. But there you go, that's a PHP file. So the downsides, the only real sort of downsides of this is, it does come with kitty colours and other terminal colours. So you can see here up at the top here, I've got my kitty. I've set that to be the colours that come with it, and it's not super clear. Like, you can't see there the active tab in kitty as clearly as you could with something like Nightfox, but it's still pretty nice. It makes for a sort of very uniform experience. The downside is you don't get themes or support out of the box for any of the status lines. So you can see there my Lua line on this active panel is still Nordfox, I think it was, that I had it set for before. And also, unlike something like Nightfox, when you switch panes as well, you don't get that nice separation of, this one is the active panel, this one isn't. But in terms of actual colours, very, very nice, but you would just have to set aside a little bit of time to get your status line matching. I was drawn to this next one, Sonokai, because it reminds me a lot of Monokai Pro, which is something that I've used a lot when I've been using Sublime Text. There's a few different colourways that come with this theme. So there's Default, Atlantis, Andromeda, Shusha, Maya, Espresso. So no light ones there, all sort of variations on a darker theme. The Espresso one is a bit like Melange that we looked at before, assuming I've got that anyway pronounced right. It's a sort of nice brownie coloured scheme. So we'll have a look at these now in Vim, and I can show you what they're like. So this is the Espresso theme. So we've got some JavaScript on the left, a SAS file over on the right. You have to just ignore the highlights for the columns. They're just coming from Git signs, and I have an explicit colour set there. So that colour is not coming from Sonokai. So let me show you also PHP file. Again, lovely legible one. So this is the Espresso one, as I say. This is a Markdown file. So you set your different style in here. So let's have a look at Andromeda. Look at that. So that's very similar to sort of maybe Nordfox, those sorts of things. But again, it's nice, very vibrant, and very high contrast without being, if you want something very high contrast, a bit like Tokyo Night is, but without the sort of quite as garish colours. I think this is a good, solid choice. Again, I mean, it is very Monaco Pro-like. So let's just go back to again, another one slightly different. I don't know how well you can see that sort of colour adjustment there, but just subtly different, a little bit more of a sort of not pastely background, but certainly not as dark. Very legible, very clear. I like over on the SAS file here how it's very easy to see the difference between the units and the values themselves. So like the pixels there, very easy to separate. Not always the case, and can be a bit annoying at times. Let's have a look at one more variation here then. All the dark themes, apart from the espresso, which is quite a sort of different colourway, all have the same sort of very dark, Monaco Pro-esque, bright, high contrast colours. Very nice to work with. It's a good theme. There's a bunch of options. So it has got quite a few options, not as much as something like Nightfox or Tokyo Night, which really have everything you can imagine. And they don't really get mentioned in the main sort of README of the repository, so you need to dig into the help there, however you want to do that, whether that's in the browser and find it there, or you can dip into the help here. So these are the kind of options that you've got here. Things like cursor only work on GUI clients, so I'm in the terminal here, that's not going to do anything. End of buffer, show the current word for the for different plugins that support that kind of thing. Sonokai it seems a little bit older than some of these other themes that I've looked at, in that it doesn't seem to cater for a lot of the new Lua based plugins. So that runs onto things as well where the status line plugins aren't really supported. So you can see here I've got the Lua line here. That's not coming from Sonokai. That's coming from just being set to auto. Sonokai doesn't come with colours for modern plugins like status line plugins that have been done with Lua. A lot of the more recent plugins that are Lua based, Sonokai, it's got a bunch of support for plugins, but they're older plugins, not these newer Lua ones that are coming out. So that might factor into your decision if you've got a lot of the newer Lua based plugins that you're running in your config. You don't get the themes for Kitty either, or any of the other terminals, so again you'll have to go and figure those out yourself if you want to make those colours match. One really interesting thing in the settings, if you like, is there you go, is this better performance on, which you can't really see there. Let me show you in the browser. There's this option for better performance, which I thought was quite interesting, because it says it's a very long to load colour scheme because of all the plugins that are optimised. And this feature, if you switch this on, lets you load part of the code on demand by placing it in the after or file type plugin directory. So if you're somebody that's really chasing every last millisecond on your startup time, that might be worth a look. This is Everforest, which is another theme from the same author that gave us the Sonokai theme. This is a very sort of warm, natural feeling theme. This at the minute I'm showing you one of the light variants. There's two variants, a light and a darker version, and then there's three kind of different background sort of hues of those, if you like. So to show you what they look like in the browser. So you can see here you've got three dark variants, three light variants, not a lot between them, to be honest, just subtle differences in the kind of background, or how kind of contrasty they are, I suppose. This one, like Sonokai, is written almost entirely in Vim script, so as opposed to things like Tokyo Night and Nightfox that we've looked at, which are written in Lua, Sonokai and Everforest both Vim script, which can be a good or bad thing depending on what you do. For me, that's a bad thing because I'm sort of quite aggressive in moving as many things into sort of Lua plugins as possible, perhaps for no good reason. Whereas if you're somebody who's working in the standard Vim, or you use Neovim sometimes, you've still got your init in Vim script, then these two themes, Everforest, Sonokai, work a lot better because not only are they Vim script, which obviously the others you can't use necessarily in normal Vim anyway, but you also have the ability then, these work well with some of the older status line plugins, so like Airline and Lightline. They work very well with Everforest and Sonokai, whereas the newer ones, the Lua-based stuff like Feline, Lua Line, no good at all. So here we are back in Vim. This is one of the light ones. I will show you. Again, like Sonokai, there's a bunch of settings to tweak. I've just got a few of them set in this instance. I've got high contrast, which gives you this sort of slightly better contrast, like gutter here for the numbers. I've got the background as light, which is giving us the light theme. Soft as opposed to hard or medium. Again, I don't think they make an awful lot of difference. Nice and clear, lovely to work with. This is PHP. This one, not so good. I find this all sort of feels a bit of a muddle as I'm looking through these. It's not as easy to discern. It's often the case with the lighter themes, but JavaScript file. Again, you don't get, I'm using Lua line here, so the colours that you can see in the status line are just derived from the auto setting in Lua line. They're not specific ones. And you also don't get any colours for terminals, so I've got my kitty config there still set for Nightfox from before. Let's have a look at the darker variant. So here we are with the darker version, markdown file here on the left. I had to think about that then. There's PHP. I find that a lot clearer than the light variant, to be honest. Then over on the right here we've got JavaScript file, and then CSS file, Sass file. It's a nice. I used this Everforest theme for a couple of months. Found it great. No real problems with it at all. I only really moved on from this just to try out some of the Lua ones and get everything sort of matchy. Really like this theme, especially good if you're using standard Vim. Not so fully featured if you're using everything Lua based. Certainly not got as many sort of niceties as Tokyo Night or Nightfox. Tokyo Night is the theme that for me I think has really set the bar for these more recent Neovim themes. It's got options galore. Well, let's start with the fact you've got 3 different variations. You've got Storm, Night, which is just a darker background version, and you've also got a light version called Day. I tend to stick with Storm when I'm using it day to day. It's got support for loads and loads of different plugins, all the sort of common stuff that you'd be using on a modern NVim installation setup. Plus some things I've never heard of, like Fern and Bar. It's got loads of different little options, so you can just tweak it to your liking. So let me show you in the flesh. So the setup here, I've not got all the settings tweaked, but here's just a few sort of choice examples. So I've got here, that's the style. There's, like I said, there's Storm, there's Night, and there's Day. You can choose to have italic functions, italic variables, whether if you're using Lua line you want your sections to be bold. You can choose to have dark sidebar, dark float windows, loads and loads of stuff, so you can really just sort of hone it to make it your own. It's also got extra colour settings for a bunch of different terminals. So this is with the kitty set up with the Tokyo Night Storm colorway. So there you can go. That's the night version of it. So let's have a look at a few different files with Night. So that's a markdown file. It's just a bit too contrasty for me in the night mode. That's the same one we got over there. That's a JavaScript file in Night. So here we go. This is with the Day theme. Not a massive fan of that one, to be honest, but I don't know if that's just because I'm sort of trained myself. I'm into the darker themes nowadays. It's perfectly legible. I'm just not sure I would choose that, over the other one. Storm being my favourite. So here we go. Here's back in Storm, the Storm variant of it. Now look, it's bright for sure, and at first it can be a little bit a bit too much, a bit shouty. But having used this, I've been using this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's really very usable. Despite the fact that it's very bright, very high contrast, it's actually, I've found it great to work with. So if you want a good high contrast, very complete theme with a couple of different colour variants, Tokyo Night is excellent. We've looked at some great themes here. I'm particularly fond of Tokyo Night and Nightfox, mostly because not only are they great looking themes, but they've gone that extra mile to provide things like terminal colours and support for all these latest Lua plugins that I'm so fond of. If you like this video, please give it a like. That's how the mothership tells other people about these videos and hopefully brings more people to the channel. If you want more keyboard, tech, web related sort of content, another good reason to subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you again next time.